Resting on the ocean floor over 4 kilometers down, the mighty RMS Titanic appears out of the darkness. Described as the unsinkable ship, it unfortunately sank after striking an iceberg on its maiden voyage. However, some believe that the mighty Titanic did not sink on that fateful day, and in fact its sister ship, the Olympic, is resting on the bottom. But is any of this true? Let's find out. The White Star Line was originally founded in 1845 by John Pilkington and Henry Wilson in Liverpool, England. They originally operated a fleet of sailing ships and engaged in the transatlantic trade. In 1869, Thomas Henry Ismay, who just became the company's chairman, decided to expand White Star Line's operations and began transitioning from sailing ships to steamships. He also began to focus on providing superior passenger accommodations and safety features, which helped distinguish the White Star Line from its competitors. In the early 20th century, the White Star Line commissioned a series of luxurious ocean liners known as the Olympic class. These include the RMS Olympic, the RMS Britannic, and the mighty RMS Titanic, which was one of the most luxurious and technologically advanced ships of its time. The Titanic was the icon of the White Star Line due to its unprecedented size and its opulent amenities. Its story begins long before any construction was ever completed. In the year 1907, White Star Line wanted to compete with rival shipping companies by constructing the most luxurious and technologically advanced ocean liner of the time. The ship was designed by naval architect Thomas Andrews and was constructed by the Harland Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Northern Ireland. The hull was first laid in March 1909 and the ship was launched on May 31st, 1911. The Titanic had many recognizable features such as the 16 watertight compartments in case of hull breach, an advanced wireless telegraph room, the grand staircase which ran all the 5 decks, and the many passenger amenities. The construction of the Olympic-class ships posed a major challenge for Harland Wolff, as no shipbuilder ever attempted to construct vessels of this size. To accomplish this goal, Harland Wolff had to demolish the 3 existing slipways and build 2 new ones, which became the largest constructed up to that time. Over 15,000 people worked on the construction of the mighty ship, and 2,000 hull plates were made from single pieces of rolled steel were used. Over 3 million iron and steel rivets were used to hold the plates together, which weighed over 1,200 tons. And this helps explain part of the reason the Titanic sank. Titanic was launched on May 31st, 1911 and was towed to a fitting out berth, where over the course of the next year, the engines, funnels, and superstructure were installed and the interior was fitted out. On the 2nd of April 1912, the Titanic was ready for its sea trials, just 2 days after fitting out was finished and 8 days before the departure from Southampton on the maiden voyage. The sea trials consisted of a number of tests such as driving at different speeds, the turning ability of the vessel, and a crash stop in which the engines were reversed full ahead to full stern, which brought the ship to a stop at 850 yards or 3 minutes and 15 seconds. On its return to Belfast, the surveyor signed an agreement and account of the voyage and crew, which was valid for 12 months and declared the ship was seaworthy. The Titanic then departed for Southampton to pick up its passengers and crew for its main voyage. Titanic departed Southampton on April 10, 1912 and headed for New York. Over 856 crew members and 1,317 passengers began their voyage. Unfortunately, many would not make it to their destination. On April 14, 1912, lookout Frederick Fleet spotted an iceberg immediately ahead of the Titanic and alerted the bridge.
Fuck me! Pick up, you bastards! Is there anyone there?
Yes,
Iceberg, right ahead!
Unfortunately, it was too late to save the ship as the Titanic struck the iceberg and began to take on water. The ship was able to stay afloat for 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Water 14 feet above the keel and in the 4P, in all 3 holds, and in boiler room 6. Titanic will founder.
How much time?
An hour. 2 at most.
Until it ultimately became unable to stay afloat and broke in 2. The Titanic then sank to the bottom of the ocean and laid there for many decades until finally being discovered in 1985. At the time, it was believed that the Titanic sunk in one piece. However, it was discovered that the ship laid on the ocean floor in 2 pieces. Over 1,500 people lost their lives in the accident, and the accident left a lasting legacy to this day. However, some believe that it never sank at all. Robin Gardiner wrote a book called Titanic, the Ship That Never Sank, which was published in 1998. His theory draws on many events and coincidences that occurred in the months, days, and hours leading up to the sinking of the Titanic. During a voyage from Southampton, England to New York in September 1911, the RMS Olympic collided with the British cruiser HMS Hawke and caused damage to the hull of the ship. This, according to Gardiner, caused damage to the central turbine mountings and bent the keel, which caused the Olympic to have a slight permanent list to port. Despite many eyewitness accounts, the Admiralty inquiry assigned blame to the Olympic. This caused White Star's insurers Lloyd of London to refuse to pay out on the claim. The Olympic would be then out of the commission during the extensive repairs and caused the Titanic's completion date, which was already behind schedule, to be pushed even further. Since the Olympic had lost a propeller blade, one of the Titanics was given to the Olympic so it could sail again. All this would amount to a serious financial loss for the company. Gardiner then proposes that to make sure that at least one vessel would be earning money, the badly damaged Olympic was patched up and then converted to become the Titanic. The real Titanic, when complete, would then quietly enter service as the Olympic. Gardiner states that few parts of either ship bore the name other than the easily removed lifeboats, bell, compass binnacle, and nameplates. Everything else was standard White Star issue, which was interchangeable between the tow ships and other vessels in the White Star fleet. While all other White Star Line ships had their name engraved into the hull, the Titanic alone had its name riveted over top. The plan which Gardiner suggests was to dispose of the Olympic, which had allegedly been damaged beyond economic repair, which would allow White Star to collect the full insured value of a brand new ship. He then supposes that the sea cocks would be opened at sea to slowly flood the ship, which would then allow passengers to be safely taken off the ship. Gardiner uses as evidence the length of the Titanic sea trial. Olympics trials in 1910 took 2 days, including several high-speed runs, but Titanic's trial reportedly lasted over 1 day. With Gardiner alleging it did not go over half speed, he says this was due to the patched-up hull, which did not take any long periods of high speed. Gardiner then states that the Titanic did not sink due to the striking an iceberg, but an IMM rescue ship that was drifting with its lights out. He bases his hypothesis on the idea that the supposed iceberg was seen at such a short distance by the lookouts on the Titanic due to the fact it was actually a darkened ship. He also believes that an iceberg could not inflict sustained serious damage to a steel double-hull vessel such as the Titanic. Gardiner further hypothesizes that the ship that was hit by the Titanic was the one seen by the Californian firing distress rockets, and this explains the perceived inaction of the Californian. He also states that the ice on the deck of the Titanic, explained by Gardiner, is from the rigging of the Titanic and the mysterious ship she hit. As for the true Titanic, Gardiner alleges that she spent 25 years in service as the Olympic and was scrapped in 1935. An insurance fraud in which the Titanic and Olympic were switched, where the real Titanic operated for more than 20 years and the Olympic is lying at the bottom of the ocean. But is this true? The Olympic did collide with the HMS Hawke in 1911 and did have extensive damage happen. The damage was extensively documented and repaired with the ship being put back into service. There is no evidence to support that the damage was severe enough to necessitate the conversion of the Olympic into the Titanic. The main damage caused by the collision was 2 large holes above and below the waterline, which resulted in 2 watertight compartments being flooded and a twisted propeller shaft. This ultimately helped vindicate the design of the Olympic-class liners and reinforced their unsinkable reputation. The Admiralty inquiry into the Olympic-Hawke collision did assign blame to the Olympic, however this is due to a combination of factors such as navigational errors and the suction effect caused by the passing of the larger vessel, but it does not lead to the refusal of Lloyd's of London to pay out the insurance claim. The collision did cause damage to central turbine mountings and did bend the keel, which caused a slight permanent tilt to port, however this did not cause any problems to the operation of the vessel. The financial impact that was caused by the Olympic-Hawke collision was significant, but the company was financially stable and continued to operate fleets of ships, including the Olympic after the collision. The Olympic did lose a propeller during one, and this did cause the Titanic's completion to be pushed back as one of the Titanic's propellers was put onto the Olympic to put it back into service. But were the ships swapped? The Titanic and the Olympic were very similar ships. However, there were a few key differences. Both ships from the Olympic-class vessels, however, the Olympic was slightly smaller than the Titanic in terms of gross tonnage. The Olympic gross tonnage was approximately 45,000 tons, while the Titanic's was around 46,000 tons. The Titanic had additional row portholes on its forward sea deck compared to the Olympic, giving a slightly different appearance on the exterior. There is no evidence to support the claim that the name Titanic was bolted or affixed to the ship's hull in a different manner than a standard maritime practice. The name Titanic was prominently displayed on the ship's bow and stern and was painted on or applied using stencils and paint, as this had been the standard method employed during the time. The Titanic did not have a tilt to the left due to the fact it did not have an accident like the Olympic. When the Titanic was taken on a sea trial, unlike the Olympic which took over 2 days to complete, the Titanic's trial was less than a day, as this could be in part due to confidence in the design and construction of the ship, as well as the practical considerations of the resources the ship required, include skilled personnel, fuel, and equipment. During the sea trial, the Titanic did in fact reach its top speed. On the fateful night, the Titanic did collide with an iceberg, as the iceberg was possibly photographed in the days following the disaster. There is no evidence to support that the Titanic collided with another ship, as Gardner supposes. Turning our attention to the Californian, there is much debate and speculation among historians and experts as to why it took so long to respond to emergency calls. A combination of factors likely contributed to the delay, such as misinterpretations of signals, distance, radio communication issues, and procedural lapses. Whether or not the Titanic could have not sunk, it should not take away from the fact that many people have passed away. However, one question remains: what can we learn from the tragedy to prevent it from happening again? The sinking of the Titanic started many years before her maiden voyage. During the initial design of the Titanic, it was determined to have enough lifeboats for 1,178 people. They also did not put additional lifeboats, as they believed this would change the appearance of the ship. Due to the fact of the unsinkable nature of the ship, many believed that the ship could not sink. Historians also believe that the metal used in the ship's construction did not help, as samples taken from the ship showed that the metal became brittle in cold water. When the Titanic struck the iceberg, it did not rip the steel. Instead, it pushed and bent the metal in between the gaps, which allowed water to flow in. When the water came rushing in, the Titanic was designed to handle 4 of its watertight compartments flooding. However, 6 became flooded, which tipped the balance of the ship. After 2 hours and 45 minutes, the ship experienced a catastrophic break, where the bow and stern became separated, and it sank to the bottom of the ocean, where it still lays to this day. Other contributing factors were the limited training and procedures for the crew members and emergency procedures of launching and loading lifeboats. It also may have been that the White Star Line may have prioritized minimizing expenses while maximizing profits over ensuring adequate safety measures. One new theory to help explain why the Titanic sank quickly is the possibility of a coal bunker fire that started weeks before the incident. There's a photo taken of the Titanic which shows a black streak along the side of the ship which was later hit. This would have weakened the structural integrity of the ship's hull, particularly in the area where the iceberg hit. It also may explain why Captain Edward Smith and the other officers decided to maintain its speed and alter the ship's course. However, this theory is not fully accepted by experts, as they believe this is not linked to the sinking of the Titanic. Unfortunately, history sometimes repeats itself, as seen in 2023. Stockton Rush, Suleiman Dawood, Shadaza Dawood, Paul Henry Nargelet, and Hamish Harding perished in a submersible implosion while traveling to the Titanic.
This morning, an ROV, or remote operated vehicle, from the vessel Horizon Arctic discovered the tailcone of the Titan submersible approximately 1,600 feet from the bow of the Titanic on the seafloor. The ROV subsequently found additional debris. In consultation with experts from within the Unified Command, the debris is consistent with the catastrophic loss of the pressure chamber. Upon this determination, we immediately notified the family. On behalf of the United States Coast Guard and the entire Unified Command, I offer my deepest condolences to the families.
OceanGate's Titan sub was controversial to say the least. Being built out of the carbon fiber, this decision became the focus of the investigation. Many people had warned Stockton Rush about using carbon fiber submersibles back in 2018, as it's not able to withstand the pressures of the deep sea. Just as Captain Edward Smith was warned about the icebergs, these warnings were not heard, and unfortunately, the outcome was tragic. Many events took place that caused both of these tragedies to happen. May we never forget the 1,500 lives that were lost that day along with the crew of the Titan submersible, and never forget the lessons this tragedy tells. This tragedy shows us that latent errors make the greatest contribution to major disasters. I should never place too much faith in technological solutions without backup, but we should always expect the unexpected. The Titanic shows us that we need to remember one thing: to have respect for nature and the stark power and unpredictability of it. The Titanic was exacerbated by a series of human errors, including navigational mistakes, complacency, and failures in communication and decision making. This tragedy sparked significant reforms in maritime safety and spurred advancement in ship design, navigation technology, and emergency preparedness. It underscores the importance of ongoing learning, innovation, and adaptation to prevent future disasters, enhance safety in the maritime industry. Overall, the lessons of the Titanic serve as a reminder of fragility in human life, the importance of safety and preparedness, and the enduring impact of collective actions and decisions, and remember our past mistakes for a better future. Over a century later, the Titanic still holds a place in the culture. As one historian puts it, the 3 most written about subjects of all time are Jesus, the Civil War, and the Titanic. Many people are still fascinated with this mighty ship, which is a result of a human interest in the passionate stories and the unique circumstances surrounding the shipwreck. I believe that many aspects played in the Titanic's tragedy, and I don't believe that the ships are switched. It is also a tragedy that history repeated itself with the Titan submersible. We must not forget the fact that the Titanic is not a tourist attraction, it is a gravesite, and it should be respected as such. I believe that we should leave the Titanic in peace and let it rest. Unfortunately, the Titanic still is facing one more issue. In the many videos of Titanic, you can see rust-colored icicle-shaped organisms called rusticles, or Halomonas titanicae. These are colonies of bacteria that are unfortunately eating away at the ship, giving it its melting appearance. Along with deep ocean currents and salt corrosion, scientists are predicting that the Titanic may be gone as soon as 2030 and the mighty ship will be no more. But I believe as long as we remember the tragedy and lessons it taught us, it does not matter if the Titanic is still here, as future generations will come to learn about it. So in turn, the Titanic has become an unsinkable ship. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and remember to stay open and stay curious. And if you enjoyed this video, please check out the one on screen now. Thanks for watching.